Powell will now testify in front of the Senate Banking Committee today. Joining us now, Senator David Perdue. He will question the chairman later this morning. Senator Perdue, it's always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
You saw the testimony yesterday. What did you make of his fairly negative downbeat assessment of the U.S. economy?
Well, he talked about the global cross currents, as you just showed in that segment, and he's talked about that before. I'm anxious to hear his comments today. We're going to probe on that a little bit, but our economy is doing very well. We just heard yesterday that now we've produced 6 million new jobs since President Trump was sworn in. I mean, the agenda is working right now. The trade issue definitely brings some uncertainty to the question. I think that's what he's alluding to right now globally.
What are the questions in your mind that remain for the chairman?
Well, I want to talk about labor. I mean, I think one of the restrictions on our growth right now is the labor force. When we have 7.5 million jobs right now looking for people to fill them, and only about 5 million people looking for work. So there's an issue there. The second is inflation. I mean, the Fed's trying to balance unemployment and inflation, and I think we've got a few more details I'd like to hear based on his testimony yesterday.
The administration repeatedly says this is the best economy that we've seen in a very long time. It's very strong on many, many fronts, including the labor front. Senator, how in your mind can you justify a 25 basis point cut or any kind of cut in the face of what is supposedly a very strong economy?
Well, I'll leave that to the governors, the Board of Governors of the Fed. I mean, that's their job.
What do you think they should do?
Well, as a sitting U.S. Senator, I try not to comment on central bank policy, but I'll say this. I like their independence. I like, what we've got going in the economy right now. They're going to have to look. We have no inflation pressures right now from labor yet. Commodity prices seem to be okay. So it's just the uncertainty around the trade issue right now that I think has tempered this. But remember this, we're flush with cash. The capital markets are strong right now. We've got plenty of capital working in the economy. Because of our pullback in regulations over the last couple of years, we've seen CEO confidence go up and consumer confidence go up. And because of that, capital expenditures jumped. Now, they've tempered a little bit in the last 6 months, but I still think we're in a very strong area right now for capital expenditures.
And we should note that you were a CEO a couple of times, so you would know what that's like. But, Senator, I want to push back a little bit when you said that you are a sitting U.S. Senator, and so therefore you don't want to comment on monetary policy. That's not stopping a lot of other people from doing so. I mean, what do you make of the president actually basically tearing into the Fed chair at every moment he can get?
Yes, Melissa, what you've heard the president say is he's challenged some of the questions. I don't have any problem with that. I do that sometimes myself. But the primary thing right now is the independence of the Fed. Look, the central bank has served America very well. We had a problem a few years ago, and we still do. We've got the 4 largest central banks in the world have the largest balance sheet they've ever had. Now, they've been tempering that a little bit over the last year or two, but that's still an issue globally. We have negative interest rates in Japan and some places in Europe. And right now, the global cross currents that you heard Chairman Powell talk about yesterday around the world is concerning. And it has very little, at some point, it has to do with trade, but it also has to do with what they're doing in the markets. You heard this tax in France right now. I mean, some of these things are not consistent with growing economies, which is what we have right now. This is one of the strongest turnarounds I can find anywhere in U.S. history. And it's because we pulled back on regulations, we put a rational energy policy in place, we passed a tax bill that makes us more competitive, and we passed a bipartisan Dodd-Frank bill that frees up a lot of capital in small town America with our community banks.
How much of the global cross currents, in your view, is sort of self-inflicted in some way? U.S.-China trade war. We've got a potential trade war with Europe. France is attacking U.S. tech companies. We've got a tariff tiff with India. USMCA is not finalized. I mean, some of it is our own doing, no?
Well, let's look at what the big picture is telling us. The big picture right now is that President Trump is trying to create a level playing field. Why is that important? Because if we're going to grow this economy at 3.5%, we have to grow our exports. We only export about $15 billion of ag products into China right now. That's ridiculous. That's less than Australia with 22 million people. So what the president's trying to do long term will benefit this economy dramatically. We know that we've got to grow exports. We've got opportunities to do that. And I applaud the president for the first time in the last 40 years standing up and telling the world what we need to do to help create a level playing field.
The Fed chair yesterday listed as one potential headwind the debt ceiling. That's something that you are very in tune with. So how much of a headwind could that be for the U.S. economy in your view?
Well, here we are again. We are in a crisis mode again. Last minute, we have 8 working days between now and the end of July when the Senate and the House typically go back and work in the states. And we have not gotten the caps deal done this year. And the debt ceiling right now is Sometime earlier this year, we actually would have had the Treasury not been using extraordinary measures, we would have already hit it. So that's going to hit sometime in September. So we've got to get this done now. We've got 8 working days between now and the end of July. Trying to get the appropriations done on the other side and getting the budget deal done, I think, is moving. Secretary Mnuchin and Speaker Pelosi are supposed to meet later today. I'm hopeful that they'll break this logjam. We can go ahead and move on defense and labor and HHS in the short term. I think we could get that done before 31 July, and that'd be 2/3 of this discretionary budget.
What are the odds of getting it done before the 31st of July?
I think they're pretty good today.
Really?
A week ago, I was nervous about that, but we've done this on disaster relief. We did it on border, humanitarian, supplemental. So once the president breaks the logjam like he did on those 2 issues, and I think we're doing that today with Mnuchin meeting with Pelosi, I think we've got an opportunity to do that.
Senator Perdue, thank you for your time.
Thanks.
David Perdue.